Apple Intelligence and Siri have been making a lot of noise lately, and for all the wrong reasons. In today's episode of the Macworld Podcast, we're talking about how Apple has made a mess of things, resulting in delays, management changes, and bad PR. It's all on this show, so stick around. Welcome to the Macworld Podcast. I'm Roman Loyola here with Jason Cross.
Good morning.
And Michael Simon.
Hello, sir.
Siri and Apple Intelligence have been in the news a lot recently, and for all the wrong reasons.
Actually, the news first broke from John Gruber, who got a confirmation from Apple that the Siri update that was supposed to come in this version of iOS that's about to come out, that the release candidate just came out.
0.4 or 0.5.
The 0.4 version of thing. It wasn't gonna make that, and it wasn't gonna make 0.5. It was being delayed into what they called they said next year, which he had originally meant to thinking like, oh, the next cycle, the next iOS cycle, but I think it means next calendar year. So
it says in the coming year, which is very kind of open to interpretation.
When Apple is doing something that comes out with, say, with iOS 19, for example, or 19.1, they'll say later this year all the time. So in the coming year, I think is very 2026.
Within 12 months, not a calendar, right?
Yeah. And the coming year. Then the Bloomberg report where they sort of confirmed and said, yeah, Apple's delayed that. That there was a series of events following all of that.
Just the first like the only actual news we've gotten, a lot of it is government sources, and Gruber also wrote an op-ed that was really scathing that made the rounds. But the news that Apple sent to John Gruber, who was once like a really notable, and he still is, but he was once like the site for Apple people. Daring Fireball, like about 5 or 7 years ago. He was huge, and now he's still still does great work. He still has a voice in the community, but it's not nearly as large. They messaged him and only him on Friday morning, March 7th, with this statement that says that it's going to be delayed. And I just thought that was like let's start there. Like, that's a weird move.
It really is. Like
Apple to do, for anyone to do, but specifically
Friday
Apple.
Afternoon bad news dump is common, but that you issue a press release or you mail a bunch of sites and stuff, that they didn't kind of do that, and everybody else had to scramble to confirm it and all that other kind of stuff was really weird. I can understand that Apple doesn't discuss upcoming features, but this wasn't like some upcoming feature that they haven't talked about.
A feature that they told us was coming within the iOS 18 development.
Right. They said that. They said it was coming at last WWDC. They demonstrated it. They said it was coming this year. Coming this year, meaning 2025. It was coming in an update like this spring. They advertised with it.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest issue. We'll get into that later. Had that advertising campaign not been a major part of the iPhone 16 launch, perhaps it wouldn't be such a black eye right now.
The release to Gruber thing, or briefing Gruber and having him being sort of the conduit as to how this news broke out. I mean, it certainly seems like it was a calculated move because Gruber, in the past, he's been, I don't know if you want to say favorable towards Apple, but he is, I guess, keen to how Apple does its business. And so I'm guessing Apple thought, well, we'll tell Gruber because this isn't good news, but he'll do you think they thought maybe he was going to spin it for them?
Well, so here's an example. Like right after he puts the quote, and then his next little bit is, this is a Friday sort of wah-wah sad trombone news drop. But it's good that Apple is getting on top of it and setting expectations accurately. Like, it's an immediate, okay, this is bad, but type of thing. And listen, I'm not saying Gruber's that kind of journalist. He's not. He's a straight shooter. He has criticized Apple plenty in the past and wrote the following week, probably the most scathing op-ed that Apple's gotten in the last 10 years. However, picking him was definitely a calculated PR move rather than The Verge or everybody. Or, even like the Wall Street Journal, who they go to sometimes. Or, like Joanna Stern would have been like, hey, this is bad. And here's why. To give it to a very kind of personalized, laser-focused blog that has a very specific audience and a very specific readership was calculated.
And knows the Apple executives, is friendly with them, has values his access, etc. I think it feels like it was calculated. Then we heard from Bloomberg, which Mark Gurman seems to be. He's easily the most accurate person about like what's going on inside Apple, what's coming up, and so on.
Yeah, he has a connection or three that they feed him good. I think maybe he has a good filter, and he only reports on the things he can solidly confirm. But yeah, if he says something, it's either 100% accurate or pretty close.
Right. Things change, so they don't all come true. But at the time he reports them, they're very accurate. Anyways, he reported that the senior director of Siri, which was Robbie Walker, held an all hands where it was like the mood was not good. And he called the delay of these things ugly and embarrassing and criticized that Apple showed off and announced these things and advertised these things before they knew they were going to be ready, which was something that Gruber said in what you said, that op-ed later, where they said he should have known something was wrong when this was like a thing that they never let anybody test, like any of the journalists, any of the people doing hands-ons at WWDC. Like, they always let you try these things in controlled conditions and stuff, and this was something they never let them try out or anything. So yeah, he said that he was kind of a down hands-on. That was a week ago, a little more than a week ago. And then a few days ago, about a week after that, it comes out that that Apple reshuffled the management. They took Siri out of John Giannandrea is the VP in charge of AI and everything. He's the guy that Robbie Walker reports to. They're taking Siri out of his group and giving it to a new lead, Mike Rockwell, who was a lead in charge of a lot of the Vision Pro stuff, and putting it under, and he is going to report directly to Craig Federighi. So they're taking it out of John Giannandrea's group, the AI machine learning group, and giving it to putting it under the software engineering group and giving it to a new head.
It should be noted that John Giannandrea, when he arrived, was seen as like a savior. He's like, oh, this is the Google Assistant guy. Like, he's going to make Siri great.
When he was brought in, that's when Apple was really ramping up for Apple Car. He's like, this is the guy who's going to give us all the AI that's necessary to make the car drive and all the other things that we're doing with AI. That was before the big surge in generative AI that we're seeing, and that Apple kind of got caught flat-footed on. But yeah, he was a big AI guy from Google, and he was a big hire.
Yeah, it was a big deal. Like, everyone was like, oh, they're finally taking it seriously. They're giving, they brought in this big guy, and, now he's been moved off to some other, like, he has a new title, and it seems to be, somewhat not as important to the day-to-day operations as it was.
He's still the senior VP of machine learning and AI strategies. He still heads that group. But the guy who used to report to him, that was the head of the Siri team, they replaced him and they pulled that Siri team out, and they're putting him under Craig Federighi's group with the software engineer. The report from Bloomberg says that Tim Cook doesn't have faith in Giannandrea's ability to, quote, to execute on product development. It's like he's kind of an R&D guy, and it's like doesn't know how to ship, kind of that sort of thing. So they're bringing in people who know how to ship. All of that's exciting, but if they're changing management stuff now, and then management new managers are going to have say, hey, we need to take a different approach and different development, all this other stuff. That all means that new Siri that is good is not going to, it's not right around the corner. Like,
yeah, I mean, there are reports in the last week that say they might have to start over with the Siri 2.0 next generation thing.
A completely different sort of AI framework, internal AI framework. And to that end, there was a report from a business investor analyst today that said that Apple's about to spend $1 billion on NVIDIA AI servers. So they're working with Dell and Supermicro and building a large new server cluster. Hey, that's good. More training hardware and stuff like that. They need, means they're taking it seriously, but it also means this stuff seems like
they're just starting, right? Like this is the groundish floor. Is that unrelated to the M4 Ultra server farm that we had rumored about for a while?
I think so. I think because Apple's quote private cloud compute, that's inferencing. That's the part that after you've made the AI models, it runs the AI models when everybody makes a query or whatever, or gives a command. This is the training stuff. These are the big, like lots of memory, all that kind of stuff, and the huge. Apple already uses NVIDIA hardware and other stuff, and cloud compute services and stuff like that to do training. They don't have a lot of stuff that's really appropriate for that level of training. I mean, these are multiple GPUs with HBM memory, which is this high bandwidth memory that sits really close to the GPU. It has tons of bandwidth, hence the name, and they have like hundreds of gigabytes of memory and stuff. But it's all a long way off. What I think it means is that what we were expecting, basically, the Siri that was supposed to ship next week, with
or next week or next month at the latest.
Well, next week is next month, Mike. Yeah.
Well, all right. So next month. It was
but
it was originally 18.4,
right?
And then there was we were expecting 18.5 more likely.
Well, just because it wasn't in the betas.
It wasn't in the beta. Yeah, right.
But that was going to be the Siri that we have now, except it was going to have 3 features. It was going to have screen awareness, the personal context where it builds a personal profile of you and answers things with your contact, and then the frameworks with the many app intents, so it can take actions within applications. So current Siri training and technology with those new features and abilities, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'm with this shakeup and everything, I think what they're jumping forward to is whatever that future. It was supposed to be iOS 19. Now it's maybe iOS 20. This Siri LLM that people talk about, this thing where it's going to be more like ChatGPT, and you can hold conversations with it, and it will talk back to you and all that other kind of stuff. I think they're just skipping ahead. I think they're like, we can't catch up if we keep having to ship this old tech stuff with new things, keep adding on duct taping stuff to the old Siri. Like you said, like a real Siri 2.0. That's the plan, but Apple's in a hard place here because they've advertised it. They put it on stage with WWDC, but they had ads on TV.
the first ads for the iPhone 16 before it was even around or available were this. And even when they advertised it, it wasn't available. Apple Intelligence wasn't available in the phone at all. So they were advertising a feature that wasn't there. And then they were also advertising a feature that someone at Apple or some team or some bunch of someones at Apple knew may or may not make it in the time frame of the selling of this phone, which is, for a company of any size, bad, and really bad for the largest company in the world. That's just not what Apple or anyone should be doing. That's like class action lawsuit stuff.
Right. It's one thing. Apple is free and always has just keep your mouth shut when something is delayed. But when it's been promised and advertised, they need to actually do something they never do, which is address it publicly. Yeah. They need to actually come out there and say,
which they haven't. They still haven't really.
They
done.
have never done that. Right.
Right.
for this or anything else. But in this case, since there was TV ads and everything, I think they need to I think WWDC needs to include as part of it, not just here's all the new Apple Intelligence features coming to your iPhone as part of iOS 19. They need to come out there and say, like, here's what's going on with Siri. And it can be what they did with Next Gen CarPlay, where they show what they're aiming at, show what they're doing, and just say, this is coming in the future. And don't promise a date or it's part of iOS 19 or anything like that. Just be like, here's what's coming, and just give people an idea of some confidence that they know how to make a good assistant, maybe, or at least they're aiming with the ambition necessary. Because if this stuff's not coming till 2027 or late 2026, like with iOS 20 or something, just imagine where ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Meta's stuff, and like, where are they going to be by then? And that's what they have to make something competitive with.
Had this version of Apple Intelligence come out in, I don't know, iOS 16, it'd be like, wow, this is really cool stuff. Now it's late, it's delayed, it's not great what we have. And it just, the whole thing just feels like they're not at all able to keep up. And it's like, okay, listen, we can give Apple the benefit of the doubt, and I'm sure there's all sorts of alarm bells ringing inside of the company right now, but like, are they able to answer that call? Like, if they come out tomorrow and say, all right, listen, we weren't able to do this in 2023, what am I saying? In 2028, here's where, like, we're going to deliver the new Siri. Okay. Do we know that it will be up to 2028 standards and not 2025 standards?
That's one of the things, is that they kind of started on this whole Gen AI stuff really late, and they've been good at it in the sense of like the R&D side of it. Like, you see this stuff, they publish papers, and they have a site for developers, a machine learning site and stuff, where they post white papers and things. And they're doing some advanced things. They're doing some things that are fairly bleeding edge in the R&D side of it, but they started that well behind when OpenAI, Midjourney, and everybody else doing any kind of generative AI stuff were already shipping product, right? So they need to do more than just like invest as much as they are. They need to catch up, and they need to catch up with the best companies in the world who are racing ahead as fast as they can. Like, everybody's slamming generative AI into everything.
Just harken back a little bit to the whole deciding to announce the stuff. So John Gruber wrote an editorial and opinion piece about it. It's a longer piece, but the gist of it, he posted it on Blue Sky. He wrote, "Who decided these personalized series features should go into WWDC keynote, the one that happened last June."
Yeah,
with a promise they arrive in the coming year, when at the time they were in such an unfinished state they could not be demoed to the media, even in a controlled environment. And John's editorial was a longer piece that goes back and talks about when people who were at WWDC were at demos, and yeah, they didn't show very extensive Siri demos and things like that, and how at the time he didn't notice, it didn't occur to him that these demos were falling short of what they should be showing.
Right, they weren't showing the new. They were showing the new Siri, the screen glowing and stuff like that, and the thing where you can like say uhs and ums and change your request, and and all that stuff is shipped and it works. What they weren't showing is those three features I mentioned before, the stuff that was supposed to ship in spring, the personalization and the screen awareness and stuff like that.
It almost seemed like Gruber himself sat and thought about it after he posted the news. And he kind of said, wait a minute, this is a lot bigger than maybe even I put on my site. And then he thought about it and he wrote, it was about 3 or 5 days later.
I should have known something was wrong. And there's definitely something wrong with management and everything, where they decided to show this, promise it, advertise it, etc., when it was in that state, which is not something Apple ever does.
I was at WWDC last year, and I went to several demos. of Apple Intelligence. Now, maybe John got more in-person or one-on-one type demos that were more extensive. I was more in with groups. So, I was in with like another dozen other journalists and analysts and stuff. And maybe we got smaller demos. And it didn't occur to me then. But at the same time, I thought, well, these features are going to be rolling out. So it didn't seem so strange to me that they weren't doing extensive demos of Siri, because I thought, oh, yeah, well, of course they're not showing me that. It's not coming out until
Yeah, that's
so
coming in
and so.
an update in the spring anyway. So yeah,
It's not realistic for anyone last June to say, hey, what's going on here? Like, it just seemed like it was, they were showcasing something which they have done in the past. This is a feature that's not quite ready yet, but it's going to come in the next 6 months. Like, that's not uncommon. Now, when you look at everything that's happened in the last 8 months, it's like, oh, well, yeah, sure. They didn't. This thing was nowhere near being ready when they announced it. And listen, we all said when those ads were running, what are they doing? Because people are going to buy this phone. Not everybody is immersed in this stuff. Not everybody, listens to podcasts and reads news about Apple every day. They buy a phone, they see a commercial, and are like, well, where the heck is the feature I just saw on the TV?
outside the Siri stuff, there wasn't any Apple Intelligence stuff. Some of it started to ship, and
A couple
honestly,
months later.
yeah, and honestly, just shipping it, like, it hasn't been great. Like, Image Playground's bad. Like, it produces bad images. It's like really, it really looks like the old web-based Midjourney from 3 years ago. Like the first things where you're like, you can type anything and it makes a picture. That was like how novel it was. It didn't matter how bad the picture was. And that's sort of the quality level it's at. I think Gruber mentioned about how they should not have shipped this app. This looks like that kind of apps that they make as demos for developers. Like, here's how you can use these frameworks and tools, and it never ships. Like, it feels like that. It's just not a good experience.
Back when, what was it called? Animoji
Yes.
launched. Like, you saw people sharing stuff and songs. And like, I haven't seen a single Genmoji anywhere. Nowhere. Except for billboards.
The only thing that kind of works good is Genmoji, because it's so constrained in size and type to like look like emojis, and you get several options to pick from. Like, that's literally the only thing that kind of works pretty good.
And no one's using it.
And it's nowhere. Like, nobody cares. Nobody's using it. It's not really a thing. So, yeah, it has not been great.
The whole time we kept saying, "Oh, well, just wait because the new series is going to be so good."
I know, and then now
like,
that's
that was the only thing we cared about,
right. And now that's out. So, I mean, iOS 19. This podcast isn't about that, but they're pulling in and really wrapping everything around doing a big wholesale design change, the biggest since iOS 7, like huge changes to the design and UI of the iPhone, the iPad, the Mac, everything together. And they're going to hang their hat on that because they don't have a lot of AI stuff. But there is going to be new Apple Intelligence features throughout the app, things like in Photos and everywhere else. And they're going to have to try and convince people that it's going to be good. And it's getting to be a hard sell. It got me thinking, as you said, about how they kind of missed the boat on this, about how interesting Tim Cook's tenure as CEO has been, because in the first however many years, it was marked by the exact opposite. About, he saw something that wasn't necessarily something Apple invented. He saw something that was going to be a trend. It was going to be a thing. They got on it early. They developed something, delivered something special, and then dominated that market by getting something good and somewhat unique out there, special. AirPods, like
Apple Watch too.
Right. I was going to say Apple Watch after that. AirPods, they saw true wireless earbuds coming. There were several out there, and it's like, yeah, but Bluetooth pairing stinks. Charging these things is terrible and stuff. So let's make a good one. They fixed those problems. They gave it all the Apple marketing and stuff, and they that crushed everybody. Same thing with Apple Watch. Smartwatches were a thing. They didn't even go all in on fitness. It wasn't a fitness watch until like later OS updates where they totally changed the way it looks and works, but very quickly developed and got to market something that was better than other people's thing in a lot of ways. And that's exact opposite of what happened here. They chased for years, spending who knows how much money and hiring thousands of people chasing a car that makes absolutely no sense for Apple to make at all. Car software, I could kind of understand, even though they're not a software licensing people, but Apple selling cars? Like, what? It's like just a foolish idea to begin with. Then you spend a ton more on the world's most expensive VR headset that still nobody really doesn't have a purpose. And I can kind of see where they would have thought, hey, this is going to be big. We need to get in on it. But they should have cut that. It became clear that VR was not going to become like the next thing everybody does before that launched. And they pushed ahead and went through with that. And then it got even worse with the Gen AI stuff. They've realized they're way behind. They've been doing AI stuff forever, but not the generative AI stuff. And they're just so far behind on that. They completely missed the boat, and they haven't been able to ship something really compelling and sort of lead the market the way they did early on. So it's been this weird, kind of decline in that ability from early on in Tim Cook's tenure as CEO, from being able to correctly predict a big thing, get something out there that's great early on and dominate that market. And that's been trending down over the years.
Yeah, I mean, he was very into AR and probably still is. All of the comments he had about, where Apple's going, it always came back to AR. And that's why we had this, the headset's coming. But that, he missed the boat. And listen, he's the CEO. He takes the blame. He missed the boat on AI completely. He never talked about it. He never commented on ChatGPT, that stuff. It almost seems like 18 months ago they said, this is a really big thing that is we had to get involved with.
It caught a lot of people flat-footed because everyone was investing in AI, but not the Gen AI stuff, right?
Right. I mean, Apple's been doing AI forever.
Right.
Machine
and
learning.
Things like Midjourney were like a toy, but then when ChatGPT hit the scene, it blew up in popularity, and the capabilities, what it was capable of, was so far beyond what people thought could be do. But everyone else has sort of whether it's Meta or Google or whatever have saw that and went whoop, we better get on this, and they've produced really great things. Gemini is legit great. I can't stand, it's not appropriate to give me answers every time I type a Google search, but as a phone assistant, it's good, right?
And Apple, Siri was ahead of everybody.
Yeah,
everything
a long time ago.
And it's all a guessing game at that point. But I wonder, there's someone at Apple that's saying, man, if only we had invested in what Siri was when it started. You could conversationally ask it stuff. That was its main wow factor. Do I need an umbrella today? It would know, okay, you're asking me about outside, you're asking me about the weather, and you're asking me about precipitation based on your location. That was mind-blowing stuff back in, was it the iPhone 4, whatever it was. Over the past decade, not only has it not gotten better than that, it's arguably worse than it was
right
10 years ago.
It's certainly worse compared to people's expectations. David Price just published a story a few days ago asking to have Siri is that bad, and as an example of how Siri exchange that he posted some screenshots of, he says, "What's the month?" And Siri goes, "I don't understand." And then he goes, "Is it January, February, or March?" And then it asks, "Do you want me to use ChatGPT to answer that?" And then he goes, "Well, is it January?" And it answers, "It's Thursday, the 1st of January, 2026, which it is not." The answer to that is no, it's March. It's that bad.
Yeah. The, so since that was published by us and other people, Apple has fixed that. So
Right.
now
That one thing, but that is an example of, there are lots of things like that, which
Right.
is kind of the problem.
And that's the inherent problem, is that Siri only seems to know and be able to answer what Apple tells it to know and be able to answer.
Yes.
And if that deviates in any way, it's like, well, I don't know how to do that. And it's like,
Right.
well, like that's not AI. That's someone programming a bunch of specific things into your brain.
Right. So it's AI based off of different form of AIs than what we have now, which is the large language. Right. It doesn't absorb the whole internet's worth of information, turn it into a word prediction machine, which is kind of where they need to get to in order for it to be able to answer things. And to do that with Apple's level of sort of trust and safety is going to be hard, but no excuses for the most valuable technology company in the world.
Of course not.
I mean,
no. Imagine if they had, instead of developing a $3,500 headset, put all that effort and money and teams into AI 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was.
Well, that's the thing that's disappointing, is that it's not that Apple could only invest in VR or only invest in AI. They can invest in all those things.
Sure.
Yes, it's not either or for them.
They are sitting on a pile of money like a dragon. Like it is, they have billions in cash. They're spending tens of billions a quarter in stock buybacks. So, like, they have every resource to do this, other than hiring the right people and managing them right. Like they have every financial resource necessary here. So this is one of those things where it's too important to get wrong. It's not something they could just ignore and rely on other companies with, because they've been shipping Siri for years. If they didn't have this, they could partner with somebody. They could invest in somebody and build it in, and or buy somebody, partner, whatever. There's a million things they could do, but they're shipping something. They can't just be like, well, we don't have that in our product.
From where I sit right here, I am not confident in them figuring it out. That's the bigger issue here.
The big issue for me is I need to see some sort of demonstration that, well, there's nothing they could do to demonstrate that they're going to deliver. You don't know. But I at least want to see their ambition be correct. Like last WWDC's rollout of like demonstration of Siri features was like, oh, that's nice, right? But it wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't like, oh, that's really futuristic. Oh, nobody could do that. That's wow. Like I kind of want to see some ambition. I want to see them, I want to see them show a vision for Siri that is something that like other assistants and nobody can do today. Like, where does it feel like the next generation of these things and not just catching up?
Right, something that's not AI with a different name. Like, give me something truly Apple and truly new.
Right. There's that saying. There's no path to victory by following in somebody's wake.
It feels like Apple's window on this is getting narrower by the day. But is it really? Because we all know that Apple Intelligence is not influencing iPhone sales.
Yeah, it's not boosting them, but it's not hurting them.
It's not hurting them either. So, is the window bigger than we expect? In other words, is all this bluster mostly for people like us who are more into like watching Apple as as an innovator or as a company as a whole, and the general person that we always talk about, our parents or our friends or stuff like that, who just want a phone that works or want a computer that works, don't really even know this is happening.
It's unknown how long it's going to be before I'm not going to buy an iPhone. Siri's bad. Like before that becomes a thing, right? Like, they definitely have lots of runway just by the momentum and inertia of iPhone and the ecosystem and how people are kind of locked in and stuff like that. But they can't ignore it forever. There will come a time when so yeah, the window may be bigger than we expect. It's not like this fall's iPhones are going to tank because they don't have some awesome new Siri. especially if they have, the iPhone 17 Air, which is finally looks different and new and cool, and they have a new UI and all that other kind of stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's not going to tank iPhone sales. What I think they need to worry about is this influences a lot of other products that they want to do. They want to push into smart home, and that's got to be very sort of Siri and AI operative stuff. Does this delay all those products? Are they not going to be able to launch their like little smart home hub and their webcam and their doorbell and all these other stuff until they get a new Siri in 2027?
I mean, I think it's important. I mean, I don't know about that one, but I do think that this version that we did expect to launch now, needs to arrive before those things arrive. I also think, I agree with Jason, iPhone 17 will do fine. But I do think for the first time in a long time, Apple has to regain a little bit of trust back from its audience, from its core buyers, whatever you want to call it, because they promised things that they didn't deliver on.
Well, like you said, Roman, like the people like us who are really into this stuff are worried, but like for the first time in a long time, just everyday people who have iPhones and aren't like following this and stuff make fun of Siri online all the time. That's not a good place to be.
Yeah, when I was looking up stuff for the podcast, I did a search on social media on Siri, and yeah, it's all about the errors that Siri always comes up with when you ask it something. So yeah, the thing is too, also all this bad negative stuff, that affects people like us, it eventually seeps. It eventually goes, the general consumer does eventually catch on to it. So yeah, it does have a long-term effect eventually. So I'm not trying to give Apple an out or anything like that. Just trying to understand the market mostly.
The bigger worry, shorter term, is does this kind of delay the launch of a lot of other products that Apple wants to do?
If AI becomes as ubiquitous as everyone thinks it's going to be, and Apple isn't there at all in the conversation, that's a problem.
Or it's just as big a problem if they're there and it's bad. That might even be worse.
That might be worse. Yeah.
Right. So it needs to get better. They need to have the kind of internal process, structure, and culture that would have looked at Image Playground and said, "We can't ship this.
Yeah.
We're going to put this on everyone's phone."
Even the app icon for Image Playground is terrible.
Everything about it feels like a demo app that you don't ship.
And I mean, in a lot of ways, it kind of is, but they're marketing as a feature.
I mean, they put it on a billion iPhones.
Yeah,
like it's not, well, not a billion. They put it on every iPhone 15 Pro and up. But like, yeah, it's there's a problem internally when somebody can't look at that and go, this is not good. We can't ship it. And apparently that's what happened with the new Siri things. It was only getting about 80% of things right, which is terrible. Like 1 out of 5 things just being not working right it needs to be like 99.9999% right. And they said, we can't ship this. But yeah, the taste level, the expectations bar needs to go up.
Way up, yeah. Even like regular Siri, even like regular old, let's just ask it normal things Siri it's not good. The other day it yelled at me because like it like went off for no reason. And I said like shut up or something, and it's like, well, that's not nice. I'm like what? Like, but you're building in responses, but you can't get normal things right.
When I tell it to turn on a light or something like that, sometimes it says okay in a very dour voice. It's like okay, and I'm like, what? Why are you?
The one in the car, the CarPlay Siri is very like nonchalant. It's like, turn here. Like, what? Can you be a little bit more excitable when you're giving me directions, Siri?
Yeah, so it's got some weird stuff like that. But even when it works, it doesn't work. Like the notification summaries feature function and works, but nobody in Apple during testing said, wow, it's getting some news headlines like wrong. Like I know that this is a AI summary, but it's misrepresenting what the news story is. That's going to be a problem. We probably shouldn't ship this, or we should probably make it much more clear that this is an AI story. They had to ship it, wait for there to be a big blow up online and a whole bunch of social media posts about how, with screenshots about how bad it is, and then fix it. So yeah, something inside somewhere in Apple, somebody's not looking at these things and holding themselves to high enough account for like, what is good?
Well, that does it for this episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 927. Thanks to Jason Cross.
Thank you.
Thanks to Michael Simon.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to you, the audience. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to the Macworld Podcast in the podcast app, on Spotify, on YouTube at the Macworld Podcast channel, or through any other podcast app. Do you have any comments or questions? Send us an email at podcast@macworld.com or contact us through Blue Sky, Facebook, or Threads. Just search for Macworld and look for the blue mouse logo. Join us in the next episode of the Macworld Podcast as we talk about the latest in the world of Apple. See you next time.